Yo, turn that shit up.
Yeah, shalom. I'm your brother Yakubin, and today we're here to talk about Christmas. We're going to give you the history of it. We're going to talk about where it comes from, and we're going to ask ourselves a question. Why do we celebrate Christmas?
It says, for the customs of the people are vanity. A tree from the forest is cut down and worked with an axe by the hands of a craftsman.
All right, hold on, right. Hey, so let's break that down and say, so a motherfucker cutting the tree down, right?
Yeah.
That's what the craftsman, all that just said.
Exactly.
Somebody cutting the tree down. So you see motherfuckers going to the store getting Christmas trees, and you going to the forest getting trees. Motherfuckers probably cutting trees down and shit, right?
While most ethnic Europeans now celebrate Christmas in one form or another, either according to the Julian or Gregorian date, the origins of most elements of the Christmas celebration do not have their origin in Christianity. Flying reindeer and elves are hardly Christian after all, but even the date may not be of Christian origin. While we should be aware that much related to modern Christmas was carefully crafted and marketed within the modern era in order to create a more secular and increasingly commercialized event, there most certainly were celebrations held around midwinter throughout Europe, long before the Christian religion existed, in a time when European peoples worshipped their own gods and held their own myths and histories and the celebrations that accompanied them.
Keep going.
He says, they decorated with silver and gold.
Wait a minute, so when they take that motherfucker to the crib, they be putting all these ornaments and shit on it, decorating the ornaments in silver and gold, right? Wait a minute, you reading out the Bible, right? You ain't making this shit up. Okay, cool, keep going.
They fastened it with a hammer and nails.
So they be hanging shit up.
Yeah.
Alright, keep going.
But nowadays they can just go buy it and get out.
Oh, you already know it. It's new times, you know what I'm saying? There's new ways to worship this devil worship going on. There's new ways this pagan worship going on. Keep going.
So that it cannot move.
Yeah, they keep it still.
Their idols are like scarecrows in the cucumber field, and they cannot speak.
Wait, stop right there. So in the Christmas scenario, we ain't talking about the Halloween, the Easter, we ain't talking about the Valentine's Day and all this other pagan ass shit. Right now we talking about Christmas. Christmas, who is the idol?
You got
Saint Nick.
Santa Claus.
You got Krampus too.
You got Santa Claus. We ain't talking about over in Australia. We talking about right here in the United States. In Australia, they got Krampus. They ain't bullshitting in Australia. In Australia, they letting you know who Saint Nick is. They letting you know who Krampus is. Here in the United States, they try and sugarcoat them. They try and wrap them all up, make them look all pretty.
Right.
But Santa Claus, can he speak besides on cartoons and shit? Can he speak? So if you got a picture of him, he like a scarecrow, like the Bible says, like a scarecrow in their fields. He can't move, he can't speak. You give him that power. Right? That's the idol that they talking about.
And our Christmas before Christ.
The deities Baal and Tammuz were worshipped by the ancient Moabites under the names Chemosh and Molech. We see that the names changed, but the worship remained identical. The ancient Moabites would celebrate a public child mass, a public child sacrifice during the winter solstice during December 25th. Building up to this most anticipated time of year, all the parents would compile long wish lists that they would like to see in the next year. Then they would bring the infants that were born within that year to the idol Chemosh or Molech. The priest of Chemosh or Molech would stoke large fires inside of the hollow metal idol of the deity. The parent would bring their child screaming to the lap of this deity and lay their child in the lap of Molech, who wore the Phrygian cap that we see that Santa Claus wears to this day the same cap that Mithra wore, and they would lay their screaming child in the arm of this deity while they begin to profess their long list of desires for the year. Now today we don't see that people are sacrificing their children to Molech, but we do see that they bring their screaming infants, their screaming children, and lay them into the lap of a complete stranger dressed up like a mighty one who they call Santa Claus. And this child is usually screaming their guts out because they're so afraid of this man, and they probably sense the darkness and the demonic forces that are at work. Children, infants, hate Santa Claus, and the proof is in the pictures. Now, of course, after a few years, the child will begin to love Santa Claus and look at Santa Claus as an all-supreme, all-wise, all-knowing, giving deity of prosperity, just as the ancient Moabites looked at Molech and Chemosh. He knows when you are sleeping, and he knows when you are awake. In fact, he is all-knowing. He is immortal. He has no beginning and no end. He compiles a list of names on a scroll for the good and the bad children. He rewards the good children with gifts, and he punishes the bad children with lumps of coal reminiscent of the flames of Molech. He answers their prayers and their petitions. He flies on a magical chariot, just like Mithra, Sol Invictus, and Odin before him. In fact, he is a deity of prosperity, worshipped by the people of the world. And it's amazing that Christian parents would put this idol and tell them that he exists. And while they're young, they will believe it with all of their heart until finally they are crushed under the realization that their parents had tricked them. And now they will question everything that their parents will ever teach them about the scriptures because of this innocent white lie, as they say. Santa and his elves have a very dark past. Santa is identified as an elf in most of the world. The Celts believed that the elves were witches and wizards, and they were identified by their pointy or Phrygian caps. And they were the teachers of the dark arts. Webster's dictionary describes an elf as a wandering spirit, a fairy, a hobgoblin, an imaginary being which our rude ancestors supposed to inhabit unfrequented places and in various ways to affect mankind. Also, an evil spirit or a devil. Places like Austria, Hungary, Germany, Italy, and elsewhere, Santa Claus is identified by his original name, which is Sinterklaas. And there are variations of Sinterklaas throughout Europe. Some variations have Sinterklaas riding on a magical flying goat. Other versions have him riding on a magical flying white horse. Either way, he is always accompanied by dark helpers. Usually they are referred to as the Krampus. And the Krampus is a half goat, half man demon that goes with Sinterklaas from house to house. In the 1500s, Sinterklaas became a kind old man who gave gifts and flew on his magical chariot and was accompanied by these dark helpers or blackjacks. He was Christianized as a saint by the name of Nicholas, supposedly based on the saint of Myra in Turkey, who was legendary. He would leave gifts under the sacred tree on his birthday if you had been good, but if you had not, his demons, his Krampuses, would either abduct you or beat you with sticks. Saint Nicholas supposedly captured Satan and called him by various names: the Krampus, Baalzebub, Zwartdeit, or the Black Peter, and Neck Ruprecht. And these were just some of the names. In some of the cultures, Sinterklaas was dropped altogether, and the only remaining figure was the Krampus, which was kept and known as Weihnachtsmann, which means Santa Claus in the Germanic languages. In other words, in some cultures, Santa Claus is known to be Satan himself, who is the Krampus. Now let us look at some clips of Santa Claus in Europe. But be warned, some of these images may be disturbing. And these are the satanic origins of the Anglicized Santa Claus, who is Sinterklaas, and his elves, the goat-headed demons. And this is important to understand because the goat-headed mighty one is worshipped in the religion of Satanism and in pagan worship by the name Baphomet. He is also called the Horned One or the Stag Deity. Sometimes he is depicted with the horns of the goat, and sometimes he is depicted with the horns of the reindeer. In the 1970s, the Second Vatican Council stated that no Roman Catholic bishop by the name of Saint Nicholas ever existed. This is historical because people will often say, well, St. Nicholas was a real person, but the Second Vatican Council states no such person ever existed. They go on to state that the legends attributed to St. Nicholas had no Christian origin and probably came from pagan traditions. So therefore, the character known as Saint Nicholas is a myth. He is nothing more than a pagan deity who has been revamped and Christianized, just like Christianity has Christianized Christmas. The Oxford English Dictionary states the devil is called Satan, Lucifer, Beelzebub, and even in popular rustic speech, he is called etymology also agrees that Nick is the devil. Old Nick was a well-known British name for Satan. The Greek name Nicholas means the conqueror of the people. Revelation chapter 2 verse 15 reads, "So you also have those who adhere to the teaching of the Nicolaitans or the Nicolaitans, which teaching I hate." The teaching of the Nicolaites came from their teacher Nicholas, who taught them that it was okay to eat food sacrificed to idols and to commit whoring to make the children of Israel stumble. This is most likely the origin of the saint called Nicholas of the Roman Catholic Church. In the 1600s, a series of plays were developed starring a character known as Robin Goodfellow, who was a half-man, half-goat demon. In The History of a Hobgoblin, author Alan W. Wright reveals that Robin itself was a medieval name for the devil, and that Robin's trademark laugh was ho, ho, ho.
Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night. Ho, ho, ho.
In Scandinavia, the winter festival was Yule. In the Chaldean language, Yule means the infant, the child, referring to the baby Tammuz. Apparently, the Scandinavians borrowed the term for their winter festival. On December 21st, Odin, who was the chief deity, would fly through the night on his 8-legged horse, which would symbolize the 8 reindeer of Santa Claus. Odin was represented as an ancient man with a long white beard. His idols portray him with a pointy hat, like the elves and Santa Claus wear. People feared the wrath of Odin, who had come to take the spirits of the dead. They would leave treats and grain offerings for Odin and his horse. Spirits would roam freely during this time of the year, and the worshippers would try to communicate with these spirits. Evergreen trees would be brought inside to represent eternal life and the conquering of death of the sun deity. Mistletoe was revered by the Druids. Mistletoe has no roots in the ground, therefore it is seen as a gift from the heavens.
People, I'm Jenny Metherell and I am a 4th generation witch. Today's video is all about the witch's Christmas, which is that of Yule. First of all, I want to give you a tiny bit of history about Yule. Not much, just a little bit so that we understand why we celebrate this as a witch's Sabbath. Yule is part of the pagan wheel of the year. Yule is, of course, in the depths of winter. It is when the world is at its darkest. So this, the darkest point, is like the conception or inception of the new year. Yule was a big deal. A lot of our ancient Celtic and pagan ancestors did associate Yule with their goddess Bridget or Breed. Now, when the Christian faith came over to the UK and spread its religion amongst our local populace, they took over the goddess Breed and claimed that she was the midwife to the Virgin Mary. I think it's rather clever, so therefore they incorporated the pagan belief into their own mythology. One of the reasons why we would decorate our houses with mistletoe at this time of year is because this was the sacred herb, and it's well known that this is the time then the Druids, wearing their sacred white robes, taking their golden sickle, which resembles the new moon, would go and cut mistletoe from the branches of the oak tree, where they probably planted it in the first place, but you know. And this is the most sacred mistletoe to be used in their rituals. Mistletoe, of course, those beautiful white baubles that it has as its berries, is associated with the moon, and so is midwinter. This is a moon festival. Our ancestors considered that the sun stood still for 12 days from the start of the solstice. And this is where the word solstice come from. Sol is Latin for some, sistere is to stand still. It was considered that the sun stood day for 12 days, which is a bit like the 12 days of Christmas. It was Pope Julius I who brought the birthday of Christ, Christmas, into the calendar on the 25th of December. This is so close to the solstice as to almost, surpass it, take it over, incorporate the pagan ways into the Christian mythology. They also have a 12 days of Christmas, which is a blatant taking over of the pagan Celtic thought process that the sun did stand still for 12 days. And this was when you made merry. Christians did it, the pagans did it, the Celts did it, the Germanic tribes did it, the Scandinavians did it. 12 days of Christmas is a big deal, and it starts on the solstice. Now, of course, part of merrymaking is the giving of presents. It is something that has been going on for centuries and centuries, if not millennia. The winter solstice was also a time to bring in the evergreens. Evergreens symbolised life when all about us is dead and decaying. Evergreen wreaths are pretty standard throughout all cultures. And so, an evergreen wreath on your door is, again, wonderfully pagan, and I thoroughly recommend. And finally, we have the Yule log. And this was a log, preferably ash from the ash tree, which was a symbol of life. It was brought in to the home, and one end was pushed into the fireplace and lit, And then as it got burnt, which hopefully lasted for 12 days, the rest of it was pushed in too. This log would have been decorated with greenery and had libations of wine or cider or beer poured over it. It was a big sort of celebratory focal point for the household. Alternatively, you could just light a candle every single day for 12 days, starting on the solstice.
Saturnalia, Christmas and the winter solstice. Solstice meaning stationary sun. Here the sun is at its weakest, giving us short cold days and long cold nights. At this point, the sun appears to stop moving, as though it is dead for 3 days, only to begin a new cycle by moving 1 degree north on the morning of the 25th of December. This, in astrological terms, is the birth of a new sun. The birth of Christ is astrological. The star in the east is Sirius, the brightest star in the night sky, and which, on December the 24th, aligns with the 3 stars of Orion's belt, known as the 3 Kings. Lined up, these stars all point to the position of the sunrise on December the 25th. Therefore, the 3 Kings follow the star in the east to locate the birth of the new sun. Winter solstice also marks the transition from the zodiac sign of Sagittarius to the sign of Capricorn. A festival in ancient Rome called Saturnalia took place in honor of Capricorn's ruling planet, Saturn. This week-long festival marking this transition was a time of merrymaking, beginning with a sacrifice at the temple of Saturn. A public holiday and banquet followed. Gifts were exchanged and roles sometimes reversed, where slaves could be seen enjoying limited liberties as they were served by their masters.
Keep going.
And they have to be carried, for they cannot walk. Do not be afraid of them, for they cannot do evil, neither is it in them to do good.
There it is.
So this crow that they talking about, it wasn't only just used for Christmas, it's also used for Halloween.
You said no, they got different shit for Halloween. But we ain't talking about Halloween though.
Yeah.
We talk because we can use the whole segment talking about Halloween. That's the devil day.
Day of the
Dead. Yeah. So we ain't talking about that right now. We talking about the other devil day, which is Christmas. See, people don't know about horrors and all this and the Saturnalia and how that connects to this day. Yeah, people don't know about that, so that's why we putting this knowledge out there to let our people know that this is a pagan holiday and we ain't supposed to be worshiping no Saint Nick. We ain't supposed to be thinking that no European finna come down no chimney with no gifts and all that shit. No, but we do got toys though. We got toys though. Yeah, we let y'all know where the toys come from.